Hi guys. Chapter 36 of The War I Finally Won. Very early one morning near the end of August, a rattling against the bedroom window startled me awake. I jumped out of bed and Maggie did too. I thought the noise sounded like gunfire, but Maggie was grinning. "Pebbles," she whispered as she took the blackout down. It was almost dawn. Indigo shadows stretched across the back garden. A quarter moon still hung low in the sky. Jonathan Thornton stood beneath our window looking up. "Shh," Maggie hissed before I could shout. She opened the window and put her head out. "Get your jods on," Jonathan said low. "It's a secret, not a word." Jods meant jodhpurs. We slipped into them. "What are we doing?" I whispered to Maggie. She whispered back, "No idea." At the top of the stairs, I heard a door creak behind us. I turned to see Ruth standing in her nightgown, wide awake. She looked us up and down. Maggie and I froze, then I grinned. "Get your jods on," I whispered. Maggie sighed. Ruth looked from me to Maggie. Maggie shook her head. I said, "You expect her to keep quiet if we leave her behind?" Maggie sighed. She nodded at Ruth. "Jods," she whispered. Ruth slid back into her bedroom. Maggie said low, "You'll be the death of me." Ruth reappeared, grinned, dressing to ride. We crept down the stairs and out the back door. If Jonathan minded that Ruth was with us, he didn't say. He lifted his fingers to his lips, then led us down the path toward the stables. A little ways from the cottage, we met a second pilot standing beside two parked motorcycles. "Hop on," Jonathan said to Maggie. He straddled one of the motorcycles. "You get behind me. Ada, you sit in front. Ruth, you get on behind Stan." Just do." I balanced myself on the front edge of the seat of Jonathan's motorcycle. Jonathan gripped the handlebars. I held onto his arms and we roared down the road until we were almost to the stables. Jonathan lifted a hand and he and the other pilot coasted to a stop. "Wait just here," Jonathan said to him. "Back in a bit." To Maggie and Ruth and me, he said, "Quiet now." "What are we doing?" Maggie asked him, but he didn't answer. We almost had to run to keep up with his long stride. He looked, I thought, terrible. Run to the earth, even thinner than before, and every muscle of his face clenched tight. The sparkle in his eyes held an edge that was almost frightening, but when he saw me staring at him, he smiled, and his eyes smiled too. In the stable yard, the dogs greeted us quietly. Jonathan opened up the tack room. He directed Maggie to tack up Ivy, me to tack up Butter, and Ruth to tack up one of Lady Thornton's horses. "Ruth should take Butter," I said. "She's used to him." "Sure," Jonathan said. "Whatever suits." Jonathan tacked up his own horse, Oben. Next, we walked the horses very slowly over the cobblestones. If we were trying to be secret, which it seemed we were, this was the trickiest part, since the clank of the sawed hooves against the stone might wake Fred in a moment. Though we were on dirt again. Jonathan shortened the stirrup leathers on his saddles. "Here you go," he said, handing me Oben's reins. "I'll give you a leg up." I froze. "Me?" He chuckled. What do you think I've cycled through the night for? I promised you we'd go riding." "I didn't think you'd let me take Oben," I said. "You scared?" he asked. I laughed. I loved Oben. "No. Well, maybe some. Not so scared that I don't want to." Jonathan laughed too. He legged me up and quickly mounted the horse I'd saddled. "Away, quiet-like. Then we'll have to run." "How long are you here?" Maggie asked. "Mum'll—" "No," Jonathan said. "I have to be back at the airfield by 10. It's going to be tight enough as it is. This will be our secret. You're not to tell her. Promise me, all right?" "All right," Maggie said, flicking a glance at me. She added, "Ada's been letting Ruth ride all summer." "Good," said Jonathan. "Why shouldn't she?" "Mom said no," said Maggie. "That's silly," Jonathan said, "when our horses are just standing around. They could use the exercise. I'll write Mom about it." Mist rose with the sun over the green gold fields. The broad leaves of potato plants stretched far and wide, and in the hedgerows birds sang loudly. Oben walked beneath me with marvelous, loose, swinging strides. I gathered the reins until I could just feel the edges of his mouth, and he softened his neck and relaxed into my hands. I let my hips swing and made myself breathe quietly. "See?" Jonathan said to his sister. "How could we miss this?" He nodded at me and I smiled. It was so glorious, so unexpected, so perfectly right. The walk, the fields, the horse. The hedge exploded. It was a grouse, not a bomb. A grouse with a nest at the hedge, who took exception to the horses coming so near and flew out squawking and flapping straight for Oben's head. Oben spooked and red. I nearly came off with the first leap, but I saved myself with a double handful of mane. The hedge flew past. Maggie screamed. Oben stretched out. He ran faster and faster, swallowing the ground. I pulled myself up like a jockey, legs straight in the stirrups, fighting panic. I hauled on the reins. I wasn't strong enough to stop him. Now, when he'd lost his head so completely. "Sit up!" Jonathan roared far behind me. "Hold on!" The wind made my eyes tear. The hedge blurred. My breath caught in my throat, and the pounding of the horse's gallop echoed in my bones. We were flying. Flying, really flying. Butter never in his life could have gone so fast. Oben was a thoroughbred, bred to run. He stretched his neck out farther, lengthened his stride even more. Suddenly, my fear fell away. Oben was flying, and I was flying with him. Flying. I was flying. It was the best, most joyful feeling in the world. I dropped my hands to Oben's mane. I let the reins run out, let my hands surge with the movement of his mouth. Instead of pulling him in, I kicked him forward. He bunched his hindquarters and ran harder. Oben loved to run. I loved Oben running. I kicked again. I whooped. His speed increased until his stride began to feel as smooth as rushing wind, as effortless as flowing water. I moved with him effortlessly. On the day I was evacuated, I looked out the window of our train and had seen a girl galloping on a pony, racing the train. Now I was that girl, galloping, laughing, my head thrown back, the wind tugging my hair. I'd become the person I'd longed to be. At the far, far end of the field, Oben's breath started to come in gasps like mine, and I sat up. He dropped to a trot and then walked, his sides streaming, dripping with sweat. I turned him toward Maggie and Ruth and Jonathan, who were cantering toward us half a mile away. "You all right?" Jonathan called. I waved to him and then ran my hand down Oben's sweating neck. "Good boy," I whispered, patting him. "Good girl, good boy." "Sorry," Jonathan said, coming closer. "Are you really all right? The grouse spooked him, but I don't know what made him keep running like that." "I did," I said. "I told him to go faster." "You did?" I nodded. It was wonderful. Ruth laughed, and so did Maggie. "Told you," Maggie said to Jonathan. He grinned at her. "Yes, but I didn't believe you." We turned and walked back toward the stables through clouds of the horse's own steam. "Are you always so brave?" Jonathan asked. "That wasn't brave," I said. I didn't fall off. And then we were flying. We both wanted to run, so we did. He lifted his gaze briefly to meet mine. "I'm glad I came today," he said. "I'll tell the boys at the airfield about you. You'll give them courage, you will." I doubted that, but it didn't matter. We got the horses back without anyone waking or hearing. Jonathan and his friend drove away. Maggie and Ruth and I rinsed the horses down and wiped the tack and dried it. By the time Fred woke, we had a story ready about the horses getting loose and coming down to our cottage at the time we'd had rounding them up, getting them back in. If he didn't believe us, Fred never let on. Susan and Lady Thornton believed us. Jonathan wanted our ride kept secret, and I understood why. He meant for it to be a gift, a tiny piece of his time that belonged only to me, Maggie, and Ruth. It didn't belong to Lady Thornton or anyone else. It was a gift. It was the best single hour of my entire life.